Welcome, Tonya Lovelace. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. I am so excited to interview you, to interview my sister, my colleague, and audience. You're in for an amazing experience. I encourage you to just sit back, lay back, and just take in. Women of color leaders give so much, and we don't always get back. So, this is an opportunity at this symposium for you to get fed, for you to get back. And so, again, just take in this blessing. As I interview my sister, once again, my colleague, Tonya Lovelace, who's going to talk to us throughout this interview about centering our full humanity. So, first, I want to share with you a little bit about who Tonya is. Tonya Lovelace is a leadership transformational strategist, executive coach, and global cultural leader with over 40 years of experience guiding and steering individuals and organizations and systems towards trauma aware, humanity centered growth, healing, and transformation. And for over 30 years, she's provided training and technical assistance to organizations and systems to promote equity and to end violence. She successfully transitioned Women of Color Network Incorporated, a project under two organizations, into an independent nonprofit. Now, as president and CEO of Lovelace Consulting Services Incorporated, she crafts high quality executive coaching and customized professional, business to business, and business to customer services to drive innovation and renewal. Tonya, thank you so much for being with us. I am excited to interview you. I have a bunch of questions I want to ask you,
Yes.
and thank you. So, you ready?
I, excuse me, I am. Thank you so much for having me, Santa. So grateful to be here with you today.
Yay, thank you, thank you. And I don't know, Tanya, because I'm a little bit hard of hearing, I'm not claiming it, but it's true. I'm just going to ask you to speak up a little bit, okay?
I will
Thank you, thank
absolutely
you,
do
thank you, thank
that.
you.
Yeah. So use my
Yes.
cheerleader voice, my
Thank
outside voice.
you. Thank you. There we go, Tanya. Thank you, my
Yeah.
sister. So let's talk a moment about how our earlier conversations helped in planting the seed for me to put together this Women of Color Symposium. Do you
You know,
remember that, Tanya?
I remember that. I feel like it was synergy. It's almost like lightning struck when we met. But it was like one of those moments, though, really. We just happened to be at an event, a sexual assault event for self defense, really, around self defense. And we met, and it was one of those things where it's like, wait a minute, you live 15 minutes from me? Because I never get to live in the same city with people who do this work. It's like I always have friends that live across the country in the next state, but never someone that's like within arm's reach, right? And so it's like I have my very own woman of color friend that's like does this work and near me. But then, we got to have these opportunities of like going to lunch, going to brunch, being together in spaces, dancing together, and really having fun. But in those moments, really beginning to plant seeds for real work, what it meant to really reach out to women of color, really both in very similar ways, but also just in the kind of ways we wanted to do it that really matches with the type of work we're doing at this time. And for you, you already had a practice that was super established already. And so I was like, wait a minute, Santa, what are we talking about here? You should be doing blah, 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 blah. And so it just kind of went from that focus. And so there were things I wanted to do, but I was really excited for this platform that you were beginning to envision.
Yes,
And so I
thank
was
you.
excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was that excitement that encouraged me to think about the different offerings that I have. So the symposium is just one of them. There'll be many others coming after this. But Tanya, I want to go back a little bit because when you think about your evolution over these
Sure.
30 years, how do you currently introduce yourself? Who are you, Tanya Lovelace?
Well, as somebody too, right, who has had many opportunities to, hold spaces in many places for women of color And I've been doing it since I was like 19 years old, right? And
Mm,
so
mm,
I see myself as, someone who is charged with the responsibility. My calling is to hold space for people.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so I see myself as a movement maker, and a table setter, really in that way. But I also do see myself as, um, a global cultural leader. And I do say
mm,
that
mm,
now. This term intersectionality has been like really looked at, and I used to call myself a global intersectional leader.
mhm,
But I have really started um, to really claim and reclaim language that I think makes sense for me.
mhm,
And I realize that even broader term that meets the mark of all of the places that I go
mm,
seem to be culture.
mhm,
And so, in all of the ways that culture looks and the way that it expands, and
mhm,
it's such an
mhm,
expansive term. I've used that term, and really looking to center full humanity is what it's always been about for me.
mhm,
And so that's a new term that I am going to be talking about a little bit more, but
mhm,
something that is so important to me. And also in this time, I have I have begun to really centralize myself as a survivor,
mm,
which I wasn't doing much of before. I was much
mm,
more presenting myself as a professional. But I
mm.
think now I'm centering myself as a survivor and as a healing healer, right?
Beautiful, Tanya.
As someone who is
Beautiful.
actually healing at the same time that I'm
Absolutely.
healing folks. And I never saw myself as a healer before. And I didn't see myself as someone who could actively say I was healing at the same
Mhm,
time.
mhm, mhm.
And this in the work that we do and the places that we move in, it's almost shameful in a way to say that you
Absolutely.
are healing. People expect
Absolutely.
you to show up healed already.
Absolutely,
But I am
Tanya.
beginning to feel as if I can say I'm healing at the same time.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I've begun to really acknowledge that the spaces I create are spaces in which people are gaining healing from. And so
mhm,
I'm learning
mhm,
to embrace that skill set and to lean into that, because
mhm,
breath work
mhm,
and the spiritual spaces that I create, I'm learning to embrace and to own that experience. I'm a
mhm.
business owner now. I am now claiming that phrase because that wasn't something I had before. So I'm an entrepreneur and business owner, and I love that new statement for myself.
Mhm.
And then finally, mother, which is something that I took on 31 years ago. I am a mother. But nowadays, being a daughter has meant so much more,
Mm,
as I'm
mm,
leaning further into caretaking, and then being a sister to my brother, who's also leaning further into that as well.
mm, mm.
And I think I am also trying to be more rooted in community. And so being a neighbor has become more important to me,
Wonderful.
and being a good neighbor, and as well as being and trying to be a better sister friend. And so leaning more into that.
Well,
So
you're
these
doing
are
well. You're
things.
definitely doing well, especially I can speak to the being a better sister friend because that's what you've been to me. And I so appreciate you for that. I want to go back a little bit, Tanya. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. But I am curious, what were some of the unspoken rules and expectations that shaped how you were supposed to show up? Because as women of color leaders, we know how we want to show up, and then we have to, or we think we have to, kind of mold ourselves to how we were supposed to show up. Can you just share a little bit about that before we move on?
Well, like this expectation is that we're supposed to
Mm,
show up assimilated,
mm,
right? We're supposed to show up, I mean, I was talking to a sister friend last night, and um and I said something about being polished, and she said, "Oh no, we're going to own being polished." Like, so she said, "Don't throw that one out." So it's like, okay, no, no, no. So we are polished. That's okay to be. But there
mhm,
was an expectation though that we would look and walk and talk, as the mainstream would, so
mhm,
that we would match and fold into that, so that we would be assimilated and walk and talk as they would.
Mm-hmm.
that we would be agreeable, and would agree with all of the things that are said, and that we would be small or right sized and fit
Yeah.
within those
Yeah.
molds, and that we would be less experienced, and that we would be less knowledgeable and less self aware, so
Mhm.
that we would be more moldable for
Absolutely.
those spaces. And that we would even be powerless. Um, and that also, as I mentioned, that we would be healed, that we would not have any feelings that would have to be contended with,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that we would just
Mm-hmm.
be folks that would just be robotic and would just do what tasks come our way,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very capitalist context, which is a very, which is very, patriarchal context, and a very, in a very, Eurocentric context. And there are just ways that don't really match how women of color come to most tables, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I do know. I do know. And that idea of being you have to be big, but not too big. You have to be big and powerful and a change agent, but you can't outshine is what I meant to say, anyone around you. So, what a conflict, right? How do we honor our whole humanity with such a conflict? Now, you've been open to talking about you as a survivor, and you just shared some of that with us, and also about living with prolonged grief and loss. How has that shaped the way you see leadership now, honoring all of your experiences? How has that shaped leadership for you?
Well, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit of a cough here. And showing up that way, right? No excuses there. And with that, we, when I was with Women of Color Network, we talked about how, that there was this bigness that women of color would come into spaces with. That no matter what role we showed up in, that we brought our community experiences, and we brought where we were before that, and all of that, all of our ancestors, and all of our community experience, and multi-generational experience with us. And with that comes the grief, and comes the layeredness of the heaviness that we carry.
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt like I carry grief that wasn't mine, right? Like that were just layers of things that were not my things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I carry much of that along with my own. Um, and so, I have started to, but what I've also noticed as of late, Santa, um, that especially in the past couple of years, where the grief has become so unbearable,
Mm-hmm.
that and you witnessed some of that, right? Like I've come to you, right? Like you've witnessed some of that. The somatic experience of it has
Mm-hmm.
become so big for me. Talk about bigness. It has become so big for me that I can't even contain it. There are times and spaces where I'm in a professional space, and there is something that's being talked about. I can't contain the tears,
Right.
I can't contain my emotion about a topic.
Mhm.
And I no longer try to, and I don't even know if I can't mask anymore. And so, where I have landed is that, there's a lot of pressure in various spaces. I talk a lot about the domestic violence and sexual violence field, but there are a lot of different types of fields where you are not allowed to you have to show up as someone who's not impacted by the very work you're supposed to be working on.
Mm,
But I am a
mm,
survivor, true and true, at almost every level that we are doing this work from a domestic violence and sexual violence perspective.
mhm,
But there are multiple systems and multiple ways in which people of color are survivors. And I feel like I'm a survivor in all of those ways as well.
yeah.
And I have gotten to the place where I have decided to tell the truth about that.
Mm,
I
mm,
am healing right now. It's
mm.
spilling over, Santa. It's spilling over. I can't contain it anymore.
I am
It's the
so glad to
truth.
hear that. I am so glad to hear that. You know, Tanya, I had a very similar experience about maybe, I guess it's now about 6 years ago, when I decided to write my story, when I
Right.
decided to publish Running Through Darkness, Memoir of a Spiritual Warrior, because what I wanted to be able to really speak about, and I was doing it at keynotes, at conferences, and people would come up to me and say, "Oh my God, I've never heard anybody say they were a survivor. Oh my God, I never," right? And I am totally committed to understanding, and you're going to tell us more what full humanity means to you, but totally committed to understanding that I am a full human. And not only do I have my own personal trauma that was thrown upon me, but I also am a woman of color with a lineage, as we talk about grief, loss, that's it. That's epigenetics. That's in our lineage. And it is time for us to just break through the shame. And that's what I did with my book. I said, you know more. I want to be able to tell my story and still show up as a powerful woman of color that I am, that can work, that can intervene, and that can help others rise up. So I am so glad to hear that you too are free of having to wear a mask and pretend. I'm human. So if you share something that's triggering, that's emotional, I'm going to get emotional. But guess what, sis? I'm going to come right back and be right where you expect me to be to offer the service to you. So
And let me just
thank
add
you.
to that. I kept
Yes.
saying to you and others, yeah, I'm going to do that as soon as I finish healing from here. And I'm going to get that as soon as I finish this part. I'm going to get back to work as soon as and I just realized
Yeah,
finally that I, I, I can heal and I can put some things into practice. I don't
absolutely.
have to sit still at the same time. That doesn't mean I'm gonna hurt myself something. I don't mean that I'm gonna do things before I'm ready, right? But I am saying that that I can be in this state, and it can and I can be coming from a place of power,
Mm-hmm.
even in
Hmm.
that place of hurt, even
Hmm.
from that place of grief. That is how our ancestors got through. They
Exactly.
could not have done that
Exactly.
if they were not standing in those spaces of pain and grief. They could not have moved forward without that. And so I had to acknowledge that at
Mhm.
2 and 3 and 4, I was already grieving.
Yes.
How could I have already gotten here? How could I have gotten to be at this in my 50s without that? So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So I have a question for you
yes, ma'am.
to kind of transition. I
Hmm.
wanted to talk about the moment when you realize that you can no longer keep those selves separate. Tanya, the leader, from Tanya, the human, who is still in her own healing process. Yeah, share with us when you realize that, okay, enough is enough. Share with us a little bit about that, Tanya.
Well, it was in the middle of uh, working with my mom,
Mm,
and experiencing some of the caregiving things that I'm having to do with her. Realizing that at the same time, I am dealing with the economic downturn that's happening for those of us that are Black women, where so many of us have been displaced or are or have been pushed out of contracts or pushed out of roles that we are in. Um, and the statistics demonstrate that where DEI has been targeted so directly, and where DEI has become synonymous with Black women or Blackness, right? And so, or as has become synonymous with women of color in general and people of color in general, and where there's just a war on women, on immigrant people, on Native American folks, LGBT folks, and the list goes on and on. And so when that was happening, and I just continued to understand that the spilling was happening over, and was just spilling over. I made the decision that I could no longer do that, and at the same time, I was embracing the idea that, that my higher power had given me a vision about 3 years ago, that there was this new direction that I was to go in anyway, that there was this new direction around full humanity. And it was this idea that if I wanted to, it was this article that I did, in which I was talking about my own experience of domestic violence that had just happened. Some years before that, I was the CEO of Women of Color Network when I experienced that. I was in the middle of, I had just started that group about a year and a half. I was into that when that occurred. And it turned out that I'd started an organization that would end up saving my life, right? And while that was occurring, um, there were a lot of decisions that I had to make, and there was a lot of survivorship and a lot of challenges that I was experiencing in the same way that the folks that I was working with was experiencing.
Right.
And so with that happening, I had to acknowledge that, that my own experiences were so parallel that that I would have to, then as well start to, you know, embrace some type of healing at the same time that I was doing the work, but it was not spilling over to the degree that it is now. But what my higher power made me understand at this point is that I was going to have to step into this new concept of full humanity so that it would both embrace me and would wrap its arms around everyone in such a way that would lift us up, and would help us understand all of the pieces of ourselves that would have to be centralized, and would not be, that when I'm working with folks, I would not be working with fragments of them or pieces of them, but that they would be fully centralized in the discussions and in the work that I would do with them. And that when we're working with survivors, that we would not be looking at parts of them or pieces of them or how I felt like fragmented walking through the system, but that I would feel that I would have felt fully seen, going through the system, and that it would be important for me to create a space in which I would be doing the same for others. Even if it's just a coaching space, and that I would create tools for advocates who are working with survivors, or tools for business owners who are be working or providing services in any space that would assist them in helping to see folks in their full selves as opposed to fragmented selves. And that to me is what full humanity is all about.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for explaining. Yeah, just for explaining when you sharing with us when you realized, okay, it's time for me to make this transition. And this kind of brings to my mind, pivoting to that term you keep using, full humanity, and the new face of your work. So I'm wondering just that at some point you transitioned from running a nonprofit organization to running your own consultancy and coaching firm. And I think you've already shared with us like what pushed you or called you into that next place. I'm wondering if you can share something about as you have been in this new role, new place, new embrace of your full humanity. And probably at the same time that that's happening, we're seeing the attack to DEI, the attack to all people of color, male, female, trans, all people of color, white, not, but definitely Black, Latino, Asian, all people of color. I'm wondering how did your work respond to that? And how did you lead? How do you lead your executive coaching, and what is now called full humanity coaching? What more can you share with us? And actually, Tonya, we're going to delete all of that because I think I'm repeating myself. So here's where we're going to pick up for those who are editing. So you've said you're no longer interested in pretending that you're fully healed before you lead, that you're going to show up in your full humanity. So how does that show up in the way you coach and create spaces now? specifically, I know you shared a little bit about that already, but specifically, what do you say to your coaching customers, clients about how they can show up? Because there's a lot of fear in doing that and showing up in your full humanity in a world that doesn't accept us. So
Absolutely. Well, what I do is, if you don't mind, I'd like to share my screen because I'd like to
please
show
do,
folks
please
what the
do.
full humanity looks like. And I know that we are getting short on time, but I'd be happy to share this with folks as well.
Mhm.
Um, but this full humanity lens is the intention here is for folks to understand that from my perspective that that this interview that I did where I was talking about that that any brand of justice that does not take the humanity of people into full consideration causes harm.
Mm,
And
mm,
and that was when I was talking about my experience in dealing with domestic violence
mm,
myself.
mhm,
Um, and that phrase is what my higher power brought to my attention as I then developed out this,
mm,
or where it was sort of was dropped to me, this entire sort of model. And the
mm,
model here is sort of a three-part process. So here in the center is really understanding that, close to you are going to be like your dreams and your goals and your ideas, your beliefs, your values, these pieces that you hold close to you. But on the next periphery around you are going to be things that you love, your storytelling, your expression, your kinship, your reflection, your life path, the ways that you are generative and the ways that you hold power and meaning, your community, your rootedness, your wonderment, and the ways that you're gifted. These are the ways in which we engage with others. And
mm,
then there's our representation out in communities, sort of our identities, our body, our somatic aspects, our gender identity, our sexual orientation, our language, our class. This is the way in which these are the ways in which we are sort of present to others. And then there are needs, our barriers, our hurts, and our fears. These are the
mm,
things that
mhm,
would be helpful to understand about folks that we're working with. And it would be helpful for us to know that about ourselves as well. And so when I am working and talking with folks that I'm coaching, I let them know that it's important to gain a better understanding of themselves and to gain a better understanding of those that they're working with, to have a clear sense of folks' full humanity and to acknowledge that people are not one dimensional, that people are multidimensional, that while you may think that you have, that people are in one box, that if you knew someone, if you understood someone's full humanity, you
mm,
might have a different perspective. If you understood their kinship more, if you understood why their expression was in a specific way, or if you had more of their storytelling and had more opportunity to learn more about what their gifts are or what their hopes and dreams were, then you may understand more about what they're coming from. In fact, when I think through a full humanity lens, it makes me want to understand why
mm,
people who even
mm.
have different political views uh, think that way, Santa. Like it makes me
Yes,
want to sit
yes,
and talk to
yes,
people from
yes,
all walks of life.
yes,
It makes me
absolutely.
want to love people differently.
Mhm. Yes, I think, Tanya, that the challenge is not everybody's ready for that, right? So, as much as we are ready, and that's what I want to kind of charge us all who are listening, get ready. Let us get ready. Let us be the example. Let us embrace our full humanity. And maybe I'm naive, I don't think so, but maybe just by being in our full humanity, we give others permission to share with us because not all settings will welcome that dual transparency, but I'm willing and also very mindful as we're doing that to set the appropriate boundaries, right? So that I need to be clear about, are you ready to receive my full humanity? Doesn't get given to everyone. I get to live it and experience it, And then I get to discern who will I offer that to. But it's quite a balance. So I love this model that just begins to talk about that. And certainly, if we are supervising people, coaching people, have people coming to us for wisdom, education, how to, that is the perfect model, right? This hierarchical, I am healed, I am the leader, just doesn't serve us anymore. So thank you so much for that. Tanya, you have a special gift. As everyone who's presented has offered a little gift, you have a special gift, and I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about what that is, because you have a very specific gift, and who may it be especially helpful to right now.
I am excited to offer that I have 6 spots of 30-minute coaching um, opportunities for people, for folks who may be interested in exploring a goal that they want to solve or that they want to develop, for someone who has a strategy that they want to further think through, for someone who has an issue that they want to consider, for someone who even has a conflict that they're trying to work through. I have a conflict resolution certificate. I have coaching. I just finished a executive coaching program, even though I've been executive coaching for 6 years. And really, I've been doing coaching for 30 plus years, given all of the work that I've been doing with executives for 30 years. And so I have quite a bit of a coaching experience background. And so I would love to coach with folks and assist them in any particular way that they'd be interested in. And I've got 6 slots. And
Thank
so it is
you.
first come, first served.
So generous of you, Tanya. Thank you so much. And so I hope you guys grab your spot while it's there. And so the last thing I want to ask you, something about what does it mean to you to remember to breathe? Like really, not just a slogan, but as a practice. What does that mean?
It means that, um, you know, I believe that every part of
Mm,
humanity, I believe that everything that you need to do in life um, really starts with first breath. Usually people say it starts with the first step, or, taking that first step, or it starts with, that first minute. But I think it starts with the first breath. Um, and I think that breath is so important
mm,
for centering and healing. And for me, it really, I think, was the main pivot in my life when I started to really make change 10 years ago. Uh,
beautiful, beautiful. Tanya, I always say to people, I am constantly taking deep breaths. While someone's speaking, I'm not trying to figure out what my response is. I'm taking that opportunity, sister, to take a deep breath.
it's one of the cornerstones of my coaching.
Yeah, so that when I speak, I'm exhaling. When I'm listening, I'm inhaling. And not only am I feeding myself fresh blood and oxygen, which is what breath is for physiologically, but I'm opening myself up, opening my brain up to thinking clearly so that I can really listen to what is being offered. So, yes, breath for me is extremely important. And so I just want to say thank you, Tanya. And if there's one word that you want to leave the audience with, I know that's not fair, but I want to ask if there's one word, is it breath? Is it humanity? What is it, Tanya? What is it?
I think the word that I would leave people with is you.
Mm, mm,
Center you at this
yeah,
point
yeah,
in whatever way that might be.
that's beautiful. Wow, thank you so much, Tonya Lovelace. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I appreciate you. And audience, I hope that you got a little medicine for yourself and just, hang out because there's a lot more to come. This is your time to feed yourself so that your businesses, your work can actually flourish. When we center ourselves, we center our full humanity, and then we can really serve fully to all humans. Thank you, Tonya. I love you, sister.
Thank you so
Thank you
much. I
so
love you
much.
too, my dear.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
stay tuned for more. Bye for now.